Welcome to the What If It's Not Depression Vodcast. I'm your host, Dr. Achina Stein. And today I am interviewing Dr. Irene Cop. She is an MD and a DC, and she is the founder of the Stress to Success S.H.I.F.T Institute, who shows others how to bounce back from burnout and breakthrough to the level of success, health, and happiness they deserve through her proprietary 5-step map to true success and freedom. Besides her comprehensive background as a medical doctor and doctor of chiropractic, Dr. Irene has extensive training in acupuncture, neuroplasticity, neurophysiology, elite performance psychology, leadership, stress, and resilience coaching. Wow. Big woman here. She is a neurophysiological meditation instructor, try to say that 5 times, and a contributing author for Insight Timer. That's one of those apps that you can use for meditation. I often recommend that app along with others to many of my patients. And there are 140,000 listens of her meditation specifically. So I am going to talk with her about stress and stress reduction and her take on all of that. If you really like this episode, please click on the like button and subscribe to my Vodcast. All right. Hey, Dr. Irene, welcome to my show.
Thank you, Dr. Achina. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I would love for you. I love your story, and I would love for you to talk about that because I think it's so important for people to hear stories of people who look well and feel well and are happy and healthy. And and sometimes I know sometimes people think that I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, and that is far from it. I've been through a lot, even from childhood. And when people meet me, they're like shocked when they hear about my story. And I think it's important for people to hear other people's stories because it gives them hope. Gives them a sense like, wow, she came back from that, and it really helps people to like, gosh, if she can do it, then I can do it too, So why don't you start there? Because I think it's such a powerful story.
I would love to. And you're so right, Dr. Achina, that it's easy to look at someone and assume that you know everything there is to know about them. And there can be what I call a reverse prejudice. Well, you look fine, so you can't possibly have any idea of what I'm going through.
Right.
And the reality is, like with you, I have had at least one moment in my life where I seriously wondered whether life was worth living, and more importantly, whether I even deserved to live.
Right.
And that is because a number of years ago, I thought I was on top of the world. I thought I was Superwoman, that I had it all going on. I had my full-time practice. I was a single mother of 2 young sons, 4 and 6. I was on the board of directors of the PTA, the BIA, the this, the that, everything. Like, in other words, I was doing it all, and thought I was like managing just fine. What I didn't know is that I had developed a physical condition because I was burned out and didn't know it. And it caused me to crash and burn. Literally. I live in Canada, folks, and I was driving up north, as we call it, northern Canada, going to visit a friend who lived 3.5 hours away. And I lost consciousness. While I was driving, the road curved and I drove straight into a massive, about 3-story rock face, which is it's like characteristic of northern Canada.
Wow.
I broke 10 bones in that car accident, had a mild brain injury.
Wow.
Worse than that, however, is that my 2 young sons were in the car with me, my 4 and 6-year-old. And my 4-year-old had a catastrophic brain injury and had to be airlifted 3 hours south to what's called Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto. My 6-year-old son automatically had PTSD because he witnessed a scene that had adults throwing up there because of just the gory mess of it. We had to be cut out with the jaws of life. You get the picture. And this was during the first SARS. For those of you who remember, COVID is actually a SARS virus. And the first SARS was even more deadly. It just didn't spread as far. I was in hospital on SARS quarantine, couldn't see anybody, let alone my own children. My youngest son was in a different hospital undergoing emergency surgery to save his life. It took them a couple of weeks to even determine if he was going to live, because I won't go into the gory details. And my 6-year-old son, I'm receiving like reports from teachers and our case manager that was assigned to us by the insurance that my 6-year-old son was being continuously, he was basically suspended for the remainder of the school year. This happened the day before Mother's Day, I might add, because he was threatening to hurt himself, threatening to hurt others. I mean, he was lost and he was angry and he was scared and he didn't know what to do. So I'm lying in my hospital bed, and I say lying because I literally broke 10 bones, including both sides of my pelvis. I was the only person in the hospital at that time on complete bed rest. I literally could not raise more than 30 degrees up. And in this dark bedroom, hospital room, and I was spiraling down. I was spiraling down in guilt for almost killing my sons, shame for almost killing my sons, remorse, like, and my inner judge and jury were like, what kind of mother are you? What kind of doctor are you not to know? What kind of monster are you? Like, and this was, and forget the pain of 10 broken bones, including my neck and my back and my pelvis. It was just like, that was minuscule compared to the emotional and mental, and I'll add in energetic and spiritual pain that I was experiencing. It truly was one of the lowest moments in my life. Mm-hmm. And then something had happened to smack me down.
Wow.
And grind me out, even further, if that was possible. And that was somehow on SARS quarantine. I was served with legal papers. My ex-husband was acting out, and I recognize this part, acting out his anger, his pain at almost losing his sons by suing me for full custody, claiming that I was an incompetent mother and a danger to them.
Wow.
We had joint custody before that. Mm-hmm. And that all I should basically have would be supervised access.
Right. Wow.
So I get these papers somehow delivered to me in my hospital room, and I'm bawling my eyes out, tears coursing down my face. And I'm like, why me? Why me? And the thing is, my inner judge and jury agreed with him. Are like, yeah, see, you might as well just roll over and die right now. Right. You don't deserve to live. You don't deserve your kids. He's right. Yeah. So there was a huge part of me that runs the show that was like, yeah, just give him, just don't even bother fighting. Just give it to him. The thing is, and I will always be grateful for this, those papers awakened the mama bear. And the mama bear knew that I had a choice. I could give up, hand the kids over, and they'd be well taken care of. And I could live my life such as it was, without them, essentially. Or I could choose to know that they still needed me, and that more than that they needed me, to give myself the grace to know that I wasn't alone and I wasn't some kind of monster. In fact, I had just become a victim to what millions the world over were already experiencing. And now with COVID, we can literally say hundreds of millions, if not billions of people. And that is, I was suffering from physical burnout.
Right.
And given my background, and Dr. Achina, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. Given my background, I knew that burnout is actually, and has been for decades, a silent, hidden pandemic that is far worse and kills far more people worldwide than COVID has. And that it's the accumulation of the chronic stressors. And here's the thing, it's encouraged, accepted, and expected by our society.
By our employers, employers, society. What's wrong with you? Yeah, they're saying, what's wrong with you? Why can't you do this, right?
Exactly. We are programmed to believe. We don't start out this way. A baby is born with their own unique gifts and talents and genius. I truly believe that. They are valuable just because they're born, because they're alive. Mm-hmm. And yet somewhere along the way, we are programmed to believe that we have to achieve to be worthy. Right. Mm-hmm. That we have to give until we're bled dry. And sorry, guys, we women really have that up the wazoo. Like it's part of a female's makeup as far as what we are programmed into, that nurturing. That part of that nurturing is that, well, you're selfish and self-centered if you give anything to yourself first, right? But yeah, it's like we have to prove that, what I call the gauntlet mentality, right? That we have to prove that we have what it takes, right? That if we need help, we must be weak, we're a failure, or worse, we're lazy.
Right. Yeah.
Simone Biles found this out last summer in the Tokyo Olympics when she got a case of the twisties, and which, for those of you who don't know, is where she's up in the air doing one of her fantastic moves, and all of a sudden she couldn't tell which way was up. She got disoriented. And she could have literally fallen and broken her neck because she didn't know, or hurt something else. So she withdrew from some events until she was able to work through it. And she used that word, mental health.
Right. Yeah.
That she was withdrawing for her mental health. And there were people, including a senator in Texas and some other big name interviewer who should be ashamed of themselves, that well, if you want to take, if you just feel like having time off, do it on your own time.
Right. Yeah, I know.
Calling her a failure, calling her weak, and intimating many different things. And saying that she obviously didn't have what it takes. She is the most decorated gymnast in the world, right? I believe.
Yeah.
And yet she still apparently had to keep proving it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for her, right? Yeah.
And so this is what our society teaches us. And guys, to make you feel better, you, God bless you, have been programmed for the most part to be, you have to be strong and suck it up and take it like a man, strong, silent type. You don't dare ask for help. Mm-hmm. So we have all of this fear-based programming, this and fear-based learning. Thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that, right? In other words, all of that drains us of energy and sets us up for burnout.
Right. Yes. I like you bringing up the word programming, because that's really, a lot of people don't even realize that they have this programming in place. they're not aware of it at all. And so even just noticing what are the things that they operate from. And some of those things that I talk about is the shoulds. Well, I should do that. I'm supposed to do that. Like, well, says who? Says who? Where is that written? Like, where did that come from? Right? All the shoulds, and I'm supposed to do that. That's what we're supposed to do. Yeah, says who? So, really challenging those beliefs, I think, are really, really important. But you're right that those are also rooted in a different kind of programming that you're talking about. It's not just a cognitive programming, but other types of programming as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's for the most part, it's that programming that's downloaded into us as children that we soak up like sponges, and we're not even aware of it, right? And so in other words, we're playing really programming that was given to us by somebody else's. So we're essentially allowing somebody else to control us. And I'll be happy to talk more about that later. And that is what I recognized as I was lying in that hospital room, bawling my eyes out, that when I asked why me, because I did everything so-called right. In other words, I was a meditation instructor. I meditated. I was a doctor. I ate right. I exercised. I did yoga. I made sure I got lots of sleep, as much as you can with 2 young boys, right? In other words, I supposedly did everything right, and it still wasn't good enough. And so I decided that I would give myself the grace to buck that programming and understand that I wasn't a failure and I wasn't a monster, and because I had allowed this to get the better of me. And that with my education, my clinical background, and now my personal experience, I was the best person to lead the charge, so to speak, on eradicating burnout. And I also refer to it as flameout syndrome. The reason being is that burnout, according to traditional psychological terms, Dr. Freudenberger, when he coined that, he was specifically talking about workplace burnout and only mental and emotional, like feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, where you disengage, right? The World Health Organization still defines it as that. So does Christina Maslach, who created the burnout assessment. And I knew that it can have very catastrophic physical impacts, and that it's not just workplace related. Everybody who's been through COVID understands that it's not just workplace related. You can get sick.
Right.
Your parents or family can get sick. God forbid they actually get other conditions like Alzheimer's, or they fall down and break a leg, or you have to homeschool as well as work from home and juggle this. How about financial stresses and increased workload, wondering whether if you take the vacation that you supposedly have, whether you're going to have a job left when you come back. Like all these fears and stresses that have been going on have created physical impacts on the body, not just mental and emotional. And the reason why I'm here with you, I am a huge advocate for mental health awareness, mental health recovery. And it's also what I call the canary in the coal mine, because for those of you who are familiar with that, the miners up until like the late 80s used to take canaries in a cage, and they would take them down into the mine with them because the canary was more sensitive to the toxic fumes and then the miners were. So as soon as the canary basically keeled over and went unconscious, now they have mechanisms to teach them that, thank goodness. Right? They knew that they had to get out because they would be next.
Yep. Don't have to kill more canaries anymore.
Exactly. So the mental health, the emotional health, the anxiety, the overwhelm, the depression symptoms, those are extremely important and can be catastrophic in and of themselves. I'm not making light of them. And to put it on a more acceptable platform is to understand that if you don't take care of those now, you are setting yourself up for diabetes, heart disease, cancer, increased viral infections, like COVID, inflammation and pain. And in other words, so many ways, autoimmune conditions, that it can impact you if it's allowed to go that far.
Yeah, sometimes in the body, it's the emotions and the emotional upheaval that actually could be the canary in the coal mine for the rest of the body. And a lot of people don't realize that. And so you're absolutely right. What's happening in the brain is also happening in the body. And the brain is the most sensitive organ, in my opinion. I'm biased, but in my opinion, it's the most sensitive organ to all sorts of inflammation, causes of inflammation. And guess what, guys? The brain, the head is connected to the body. So a lot of times our system is set up where we take the head and we treat that over there, and we take the body and we treat it over here. It's not really looked at as a whole system. So yeah. So, I'm assuming, but I think it's helpful to tell everyone else, that you're doing well, your boys have recovered and, and also doing well. But how many years ago was this happened, this car crash?
That was 18
years ago.
18 years ago. Yes.
Yeah.
And yes, to put your listeners' minds and hearts at ease, after they decided my youngest son was going to live, top neurosurgeon said he was never going to walk again. He was never going to talk again. He was never going to pass high school because he's literally missing about a third, or at least a third, of his left side of his brain. Huge chunk gone. I've seen the SPECT scans as they, a computer rendition of the brain rotating around in this big dark spot where there was no activity going on. And I cried, I will tell you that. And at the same time, that mama bear refused to accept that. Right. I was like, no, absolutely not. I believe that neuroplasticity can and will heal my son. Neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to heal itself, and for other parts of the brain to take over from areas that are lost or damaged.
Absolutely.
And fast forward 18 years, not only does he walk, talk, he's also in his 4th year of engineering at one of the best universities in Canada. In fact, they both are. And so they're both doing awesome. And did it take tons of work? Absolutely. Absolutely. And to me, it's another reason, like you, I'm passionate about the brain and the mind, because I go, if my son can do what he's doing, missing, and I'm awful at math, a good 20% of his brain, what can we do with intact brains? Exactly.
So yeah, it's so great to hear your story, and obviously their story too, and seeing that, it really does take hope. It takes self-worth and work, so it's believing in yourself and doing the work and having goals and reaching for them because you deserve it. It's fantastic. Great story. So let's dive into what it is that helped you through this. Some of the things that you particularly specialize in. You mentioned, neuroplasticity, and thank you for the definition, because that would have been my question next. But how do you find? We talked about burnout and flame out. How do you find that stress causes, or contributes to symptoms of depression? You spoke about it, how it can cause acute depression, but it can also contribute in other ways. Help my audience to, connect the dots, basically.
Absolutely. I would love to. So stress, number one, is neither good nor bad. I've had the honor and the privilege to be friends and be mentored by Dr. Richard Earl, who was the last postdoctoral student of Dr. Hans Selye, who is the father of stress.
Right.
So I'm about as close as you can get there. So like one removed. Unfortunately, Dr. Selye was gone before I came to this area of my life. And Dr. Selye said, stress is neither good nor bad. It's how, in large part, we perceive it. In other words, it can be your superpower. It can be your, that high octane energy that, the stereotypical thing is a 98-pound mother lifting a car off of her pinned child. Right. In other words, that is the stress response. That is your superpower. That is where you're using it and you're in survival mode. And that includes protecting those you love and lifting that car. Because if that weren't in play, you couldn't pay that woman $1 million, $2 million or more and expect her to lift the car. Right. It's that high octane energy, right? It's that survival mode, that protective mode when we feel threatened, and we are hardwired to approach it in different ways. So you may have heard, and your listeners may have heard of fight, flight, freeze.
Mm-hmm. We've talked about it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So flight is, and we're just like animals. So I'll give the animal examples. Mm-hmm. And just know that we are all hardwired in different ways to respond instinctively. First one, flight, like a gazelle, right? Lion comes running along, gazelle runs. That's what it's hardwired to do. It doesn't think twice. It just does it, right? A honey badger will turn and fight. Mm-hmm. It's like, bring it on, right? And it ramps up, right? A rabbit will freeze and, shivering in fear, but it'll freeze, right? Please don't notice me. Please don't notice me. and then a possum will pretend to be dead.
Right. Plays dead. Faints.
Plays dead. Right. Faints. Plays dead. Don't notice me.
Right. Because the animals don't eat dead animals. So if you pretend to be dead.
Carrion eaters, yes.
Yes, right. The vultures.
Vultures, hyenas. Yeah, exactly. I have Lion King in my mind right now. Hyenas, right? And we humans are the same way. And so one of the things that acute stress, that survival mode does is it knocks our executive team offline, right? Our executive team is this part of our thinking brain that sits behind our forehead, and it's where we think logically, where our working memory is stored, where our ability to think, come up with creative solutions, make decisions, act on those decisions. Oh, and emotional inhibition, right? So that you're not crying at the drop of a hat or flying off the handle at loved ones or a boss that you shouldn't be doing that, right? That's all part of here. Thing is, when you are in what your brain perceives as life or death, which is what the survival mode is, it knocks it offline, because that's not the time to be going, let me think about this for a second. Should I run here or should I stand and fight?
Right.
What's the best thing to do here? No, that's going to get you eaten really quickly.
Right.
So that's why it's important that our executive team goes on a vacation, goes on hiatus,
right,
while that's happening.
Yeah.
Now, in the animal world, like say a gazelle, they run away from the lion and hopefully get away from him, or the lion eats some other poor gazelle. And within about 20 minutes, they go back to calmly grazing, because it takes those the body's chemical messages,
right,
about 20 minutes to leave, like to dissipate and be used up. And that is things like your adrenaline, right? It's that woof, right? And all the blood that gets shunted into where your muscles that are is either going to allow you to flee, run, I can't speak right today, or fight. And that is great. That is how it's meant to be, right? It's meant to save us in the short term. Now, if, say, it's a bit of a longer hike and the gazelle has to keep running, the adrenaline gets worn out really quickly, depleted. And so our cortisol hormone, which is our stress hormone, ramps up. And it's more for like the marathons. It's like the medium term, right? Okay, this guy's not giving up chasing me. I gotta keep going. Maybe I can't go at top speed, like my superhero speed, but I can keep running and hopefully outpace him. Right. Or keep fighting. And again, the cortisol does what it's meant to do. It mobilizes your blood sugar.
Right.
And gets that energy, that extra energy that you need to keep going when the going is gone, continuing to be tough. Right. And then at some point, if it doesn't let up, you exhaust, because all of those hormones and neurotransmitters are created mostly in your adrenal glands that sit on top of your kidneys. And so your adrenals become depleted. They got nothing.
Right.
They got nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, that is when the body starts breaking down. And it actually starts breaking down, fun fact, before that.
Right, before that.
Not so fun fact, with the cortisol hormone, because remember, you're hardwired to survive. It's not worried about how it's going to impact you months or years down the road. It's like in the moment, how do I stay alive?
Right.
With this threat here. Yeah. Now, the challenge is that we humans are the only animals that we know of in the universe who can perpetuate that stress into like an ongoing and never getting a let up, because we think about everything that's gone wrong in the past, whether it's traumas we've experienced or that fight with our boss, or worried about the future and whether our kids are going to be okay, or whether we can afford to pay our mortgage, or whether we're going to have a job left if we go on vacation. In other words, and then society adds in its heaping dollop of expectations and programming. And this last couple of years alone has been like a continuous stream of stressor. And you see it impacting people. There are people, with riots and short fuses and anger, like the polarizing effect on humans is not just politics. It's also because it's that fear
emotionally driven.
It's emotionally driven.
Yeah.
And so everybody's executive team has gone on this extended vacation.
And not come back. Where'd it go?
And not come back. And so the cortisol hormone impacts your body like right away, because remember I said it ramps up your blood sugar. It mobilizes your blood sugar. So you're going to find that your blood sugar gets higher. And if it goes on long enough, you can develop diabetes. It increases your blood pressure, and that with the diabetes and blood sugar can then cause cardiovascular disease. It messes with your sleep pattern, so you have insomnia and you can't sleep. What does that do? Adds more stress. Right, and makes you feel like crap. That's a highly technical term, right? And then all of that ramps up your inflammation in your body. Inflammation is where your immune system has gone all wonky, and your immune system is depressed, which is why you're more susceptible to get viral infections. Especially you're more susceptible to cancer. You're more susceptible to autoimmune conditions, where that's that immune system that actually turns around and starts fighting parts of your body and can cause thyroid, and it can cause conditions, and it could cause diabetes in children, and rheumatoid arthritis, and multiple sclerosis, and allergies, and sensitivities, and more. So all of this starts happening when you get, as you move out of the acute phase into the medium term phase. So to put that into context, say March 2020 is when everyone went down into to shut down and the poop hit the fan. To say that, I did clean it up a bit. By September and months of lockdown, we were already at that moderate stage. We were already in that middle phase. So we have been there. And now we're in what's called the long haul, right? The chronic stress phase, which is where we're in adrenal exhaustion. All of us have just like, we're either on that slippery slope or we are ready to crash and burn in flame out. And I named it that because that is what happens with an airplane. If it loses one or more of its engines, you may be able to pull it out or you may crash and burn. Right. So that is why I chose that as the whole complex syndrome. And so
and then all of these symptoms that you've mentioned ultimately can cause or contribute to depression.
Absolutely. So right from the very beginning, one of those stages, or one of those, what the Hans Selye Foundation and Canadian Institute for Stress, because Dr. Hans Selye was in Canada, calls it, we call it fight, flight, freeze, or faint. Well, my word for that, the unique stress style, is down and out. It's where you feel full of despair, where you feel hopeless. And if I were to put an Avenger, I have a cute little Avenger quiz, interactive quiz I created because I'm a superhero freak because of my sons. And so Hawkeye would be a perfect example of feeling down and out, like where he feels like everything's been taken from him, that life has been done to him, that there's no hope, there's no way out. So right in the very beginning, you may be feeling those symptoms of depression, and they're actually your stress response. And you could say it's kind of like giving up, fainting, and playing dead. Right? Okay, I'm done. Right. So there's an example of how depression can show up right from the very beginning. Depression symptoms, feelings of despair and hopelessness, feeling victimized by life, feeling powerless. Right. And then as you move through into the middle term length of the stress and the cortisol hormone, that hormone goes up and again messes with the hormones and neurotransmitters in your brain. So it's very likely, and your remember I said insomnia,
right?
And Dr. Achina, I know this is your area of expertise far more than mine, and I know you'll agree. Like, I remember in my medical training alone, when I was doing my psych rotations, there were two gentlemen that came into what's called the PIC unit, the psychiatric intensive care unit, for very different reasons. But the thing that they had in common, two things that they had in common. One is they both tried to commit suicide, complete suicide. And the other is that it started with insomnia. And one of those was an older gentleman who had Parkinson's that had just been given a new medication that had a rare, severe side effect of causing insomnia, like where he couldn't sleep. And unfortunately, he went to the ER, said, please give me something, I can't sleep. And they thought he was drug seeking and they didn't give him anything. They said, take melatonin, which is really great for many things, just not in this case.
Right.
The other was a gentleman who, very successful businessman, owned his own company and everything. So he was a go-getter. And then one day decided to try and walk out in front of a transport truck. And it turned out that he had chronic sleep deprivation because he had sleep apnea, and no one recognized it because he was tall and thin. He didn't fit the stereotype for having sleep apnea. So there's an example of where chronic lack of sleep can impact you. And it doesn't have to be all that long. It can be just a few weeks. So if you've been burning the midnight oil,
Right.
trying to get work done, or maybe you're because your executive team is off on hiatus and you can't think straight and you can't make decisions, and your boss is hounding you for this stuff, and you have a deadline, and it's taking you twice as long to do the work, and you're not getting it done, right? So you're staying up later and later and later. Well, guess what? You're setting yourself up for symptoms of depression just from the lack of sleep.
Right.
And not to mention how it impacts your other neurotransmitters, like your happy hormone, your serotonin.
Right. Yeah.
So there's how it can impact you over the short term, the middle term. And then the long term is where everything gets depleted and you're just left with nothing. Mm-hmm. It's basically, you may feel like complete apathy.
Right.
And again, feeling victimized by life. Mm-hmm. And so you don't even have to be down and out. How many people feel victimized by life?
Right.
Powerless, like life is being done to them right now, like they have no control. When you feel like you're powerless and you have no control and life is being done to you, how do you feel? Symptoms of depression.
Right. And you feel like you can't do anything about it. But many times when people feel that way. Absolutely. So, there is a way to come back from all of that. And I know that you have some information about some of the hidden factors that most people wouldn't necessarily know about that can heal your symptoms of depression related to all of these issues that you've brought up. And it's obviously multiple issues that have come together that could result in depression. Can you talk about some of those hidden factors that block people from healing?
Oh, I would love to. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
So I'll back up and say it was not an easy road just because I decided to say, no, I'm going to keep my kids and that's all there was to it. You want to talk stress. I went through a 5-year custody battle for, just to even maintain the right to have them 50% of the time. I needed to heal. My sons needed to heal. So it was an upward hill and battle for many, many, many years. Right. And in my quest to find the answers to help my sons heal, to help me heal, because I was like, that's like Hades, that's going to happen. And refusing to believe the prognosis that was basically given to all of us. The answers I found and my own personal realizations that my programming set me up for failure. As I say, as babies, we're designed for success, but then our programming and our life experiences set us up for failure and set us up to crash and burn. And so the answers that I went looking for included doing becoming certified with the Canadian Institute for Stress and the Hans Selye Foundation, taking 6 or 7 other coaching certifications from everything from personal development to resilience, to leadership, to corporate culture, anything that I felt I needed to make a change. I went back and got my medical degree. In other words, I was determined to find the answers to help my sons heal and to fulfill the promise that I made that day in that hospital as part of my decision, that if I could help even one person, one family, prevent them from suffering what my family and I suffered and almost suffered, then I would be successful. Right. And so over the years, especially after my sons were fine and we were fine and I could devote more and more of my time and energy to this, I developed what I call the 5-step stress to success shift blueprint. Mm-hmm. And I talk about success because I always like to talk about the positive rather than the negative. So the opposite of the flame out or burnout. But how do you make that shift? When you are in the depths of despair, if you're completely overwhelmed and vibrating literally with anxiety, if you feel like giving up or that there is no hope or that you've lost everything perhaps, what are the steps that are needed to take you. And any one of those 5 steps can block you. And the very first one is the stress, right? Remember I said, you take your executive team offline. So the very first step is what I call SOS tools to kickstart your brain's executive team, bring them back online so that, you can actually start thinking straight and remembering things and coming up with creative solutions and think logically and make good decisions and act on them and no longer flying off the handle or crying at the drop of a hat. And so the SOS tools, and if we have time, I'm happy to show some of them. I have lots of them.
Okay.
That is the very first step, because mindset is wonderful, but if that requires your conscious brain, in other words, if your conscious brain is literally like offline, you're most of the self-care, all of that, it's not going to work. That's why how many of us know that we should do self-care?
Right. Yeah.
How many of us
people know, but they don't do it. Right. Yeah.
Right. How many of us know we should eat right? How many of us know we should exercise? How many of us know we should get more sleep? Right. We're shooting all over ourselves. And the reality is, it's not our fault. It's that we can't think straight because we are in survival mode. So the very first step is to kickstart your team's.
So why don't you go over maybe 1 or 2 tools right now?
Absolutely. I would love to. So happy you asked. So happy you asked. Okay. So the very first thing that I'm going to show you, and it comes from the animal world. You can see it in the animal world too, right? In animal packs, say, or herds, they have the alpha, and then they have like the betas, right? So you have like the leader, and then you've got the followers. You've got the leader, you've got those that are submissive. Right. Well, one of the fastest ways to kickstart your brain's executive functioning is through your body language. Right. Because it not only sends a message to others, it's actually far more than what your words say. It also sends a huge message to you. So if you're sitting, and we can all do this, listeners, do this, please, like sitting or standing, just start, slump over. Put your head down, frown on your face, maybe you're like this. Let's see how you feel. Maybe you're already feeling like this, right? And then sit up straight, stand up straight, shoulders back, chin up, gaze straight forward, put a smile on your face. And if you need to, stick a pencil between your teeth to make you smile. Because when you do that, the smile muscles actually send the message up to your brain. Oh, she must be happy. So I'm going to release more serotonin. And when you stand up straight and more confidently, and there's been Harvard research studies to show this, you feel more confident. You feel stronger, like you can take whatever is thrown your way. There's a reason why in basic training in the Army, they spend so much time harping on posture. It's not just something fun to do or, to make them pay attention and, do what we say. It's to take new wet behind the ears recruits and turn them into confident, powerful, strong beings who can race into the heat of battle and risk their lives.
Right.
And when you add a smile to it, not only does that make people wonder what you're up to, but it actually sends the message up to your brain and changes your neurochemistry in your brain. And it's so easy to do that.
Right.
And I recommend to people it's really great if you have somebody that you trust to be your progress partner with this, but just to give like a little message, right? Like smile or put a pencil in it. I have whole groups of people that, they know to say, put a pencil in it. Right. If they see somebody like, being like Eeyore, right? Put a pencil in it.
Put a pencil in it. That's cute.
But I'll also have people take, you can take a dry erase marker or lipstick And I recommend tying this. Don't just wait till the heat of the battle, because you're not going to think about this, right? You need to create the habit of your posture. And a great way of doing this, how many times do we go to the bathroom in the day? Hour, every 2 hours. A lot. So a lot, right? So you could say that's habit. It's more than habit. It's necessity, right? So what I do,
the habit into that.
Right. You want to add in the best way to build a new habit is to build it in. So take a dry erase marker, lipstick, draw like a heart on your bathroom mirror, like where your face goes in. I've done this with my family. They know that I'm like this, and they're totally used to it. And write, I love you in there, or smile with an exclamation mark.
Right.
Or I'm proud of you. You can change the messages for your family. Right. So it can do multiple things, so that but it's that message to yourself. Oh, stand up straight.
Right.
I'm happy. Right. And the beautiful part is that the messages can, if you've had, like I had an abusive childhood and a lot of trauma in my childhood. So you can almost say that when you look yourself in the eyes and see what looks like your adult parents looking back at you, and you say, I love you, I'm proud of you. You're actually giving that message. It's like your inner child, that wounded inner child, is actually hearing the voice of your parents, especially your same-sex parents, saying that back. And it may be the words you heard, or maybe it's the words you needed and wanted to hear. Right. And you're now able to get it. So there's so many different layers to this. Yeah. So there's one example.
That's a great example. Thank you.
And the next one form of, you can call this mindfulness, but it's also body language that I love to do. And it's not just because I'm cold, because my electricity was out today. And so I have no heat in this room. So, but you can like rub your hands together, just rub your hands together like this, really, until you start to feel the heat build up. You feel the tingling build up, and you're focusing on that. And then spread your hands apart and just play. You'll feel like there's this ball of energy between your hands. And you'll notice that as you spread your hands farther apart, the ball of energy actually gets stronger. It doesn't get less. And the beautiful part about this is that without even thinking about it, you're being mindful, right? Which mindfulness just means that you're present you're focusing on the present, not on what happened in the past or is happening in the future, right? And it's a really great way that takes seconds to center and refocus yourself in the here and now, and just give yourself a break from that survival mode. Just allow it to turn down the heat.
That's a great tip. Great. I know you have lots more, and I do have the time to be able to continue. So I think it's, we need to wrap up. So why don't we, I know there was other things that you wanted to share with us, but we need to wrap up. What do you think is important to impart to everyone who's listening that you think you have not talked about that would be really good for them to know right now?
Number one is to know you're not alone. You're not crazy. You're not bad, stupid, or lazy. Right? You're just one of now billions of people who are feeling the same way. And we're all doing the best we can. And we come at our stress in different ways because it's how we're hardwired. There's no right or wrong. And I always say the first step is awareness. Remember, I talked about the programming,
right?
How stress is impacting your life. Awareness is 80% of the battle and the solution. Absolutely. And so I've created a workbook that your listeners can download. I'll I've given you the information. And it's really it's called awakening awareness around your success blocks. And when I talk success, I mean success in all areas of your life, not just your career and wealth, very important, your health and energy, your relationships, your personal life, because I guarantee that if one area is floundering, other areas are too. In other words, it's impacting you across the board. And to have true success means success across the board. So awakening awareness on how you may be impacted in a negative way and that it could be setting you up for crashing and burning.
Right, right. So I know, yeah, I wish we could talk more, but I know that you have some programs besides this free download. Thank you for sharing that, and I'll have that in the show notes. But you have a program that if people are interested in doing a deep dive into handling burnout or flame out, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely, and I'll do it quickly for you.
Mm-hmm.
Remember I said that I recognized that I was set up for failure because of hidden blocks that I think of them like your energy vampires. They literally, you could be doing everything else right, and they're sucking the life energy out of you and setting you up for failure. One of them is your programming, right? That the programming that was instilled by mostly well-meaning people, but that came down from like millennia of survival mode. In other words, it's fear-based programming, fear-based beliefs, fear-based just fears in general. And then the feeling of victim patterns and what I call self-sabotage patterns. People don't like to think that they're in victim. I don't mean it in a negative way. What I mean is when you are feeling powerless, out of control, like you have no choice and control in life, that is victim. And there are ways out of it and to turn it around very quickly. And then finally, your trauma. The trauma you may have experienced as a child, especially, or throughout your life. And it's more than that. I teach whole segments on trauma, personal trauma, the intergenerational trauma. In other words, what the trauma that your parents and grandparents, anybody who raised you, how they were impacted by life and then passed that on to you. But now they know there's epigenetic trauma and PTSD where it actually modifies the expression of your DNA, and fear can be transmitted down. Depression symptoms can be, like all those stress feelings can be transmitted down, and it's even been shown to impact your physical like conditions, mortality rates, and so forth. So I created a 4-week retrain your brain boot camp that is designed and does help you clear any blocks at the 5 steps from stress to success, as well as the 4 major success barriers that I identified: your sabotage patterns, your fears, your programming, and the trauma.
Cool. That's fantastic. That's really fun. I can actually think of a few people that should do it. 100%. I'll let them know about it. Yeah. So thank you so much, Dr. Irene, for sharing all of your story and all of your experiences, and also your knowledge and programs. I know that it will be, I'm sure everyone's receiving all of this information well, and I will include all of your contact information in the show notes, so that if anyone wants to contact you directly, that they'll be able to do that. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. It was great.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate you so much, Dr. Achina.